don't you sit like in the recliner or something? All right. I'm Grandma.
She's the director.
She's the managing director. All right, that's good. All right. So, let's see here.
So we just got back from Moish, and it's.
And if you forget, forget anything, you can always add it later. So we'll do this over the next. You know what I mean? So, it'd probably be more comfortable just to talk to me and talk to Mom. You know what I mean?
I will talk to you, and I'll talk to Mom.
Uh-huh.
And Mom will talk to him.
Then you're falling apart.
Mom will correct me.
You're falling. You can't correct him from over there. You gotta
I
wait till I'm
never
doing it.
correct him. What is he talking? Stupid old man.
So.
So what would you like to know?
Well, first of all, I wanted to know if you saw this movie called. What's the name of this movie? I was just watching it on pay-per-view the other day. It was so good and so interesting. It was called. I forget the name of it now. The Stories We Tell. Have you ever heard of it or seen it?
Never heard of it.
It was a documentary about this woman's family. Right? This has nothing to do with this. I just thought about it.
From Nazi Germany?
No. It has nothing to do with any of it. And her name is Sarah Polley. She's actually an actress. One of those actresses that's in all the millions of independent movies. If you're into independent movies, you know who she is. And she became a director. And directed a couple of movies, got great reviews. And then she made this movie just about her family and growing up, and just from everyone's point of view in her family. It was just fascinating. It was just really fascinating. Anyway, if you get to see it, well, it's called The Stories We Tell. Okay?
Look for it.
What about...
Good.
It's okay. What about... what do you think about the Giants' chances?
I think the Giants don't stand any chance whatsoever.
What's bad is that all the people in the NFC East won last week.
It was a very depressing weekend.
And the Jets won, I know.
And the Jets won.
And
Philadelphia Eagles are going to play Green Bay next week without Aaron Rodgers.
But the good news is I think we pay him in 2 or 3 weeks.
I think
probably
so.
Without Aaron Rodgers too.
We don't know that.
So all we got to do is keep winning.
Exactly. Right.
Okay?
Right.
So if
That's a tall task, though.
we get up to 6-6 and then we worry about it. You know?
You're dreaming.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, but you bet on them in Las Vegas.
And I won.
And you won.
Did you bet on them to win the Super Bowl?
I did not do that.
What about the Sixers? Do you think that the Sixers fans are depressed
I
that
picked
they're
the
winning?
Sixers to win the NBA championship. I got 2,000 to 1 odds.
No, you don't.
No, you didn't. But you wish you did right
I wish
now.
I did. Yeah.
Like a $1 bet?
Of course, they lost last night.
So
So.
they lost last night, right? They broke their 3-game.
I think that the fans are depressed, right? Because they're not going to get the #1 draft pick next year. That was the whole plan. Was
get
to
the
tank.
#1 draft choice.
Yep.
Right.
The whole plan was to tank.
Right.
Oh, so
Dad's been watching hockey.
you have to because the football's depressing.
I don't even, something, I didn't watch the end of either the Sunday night or the Monday night
neither.
football game.
Me neither.
Because you know what, I'm not interested.
It kind of sucks. It really does suck.
I don't remember in the last 30 years feeling this way about the football season.
This is November 5th, 2013. And you're already not interested? That's it?
I mean, it just kind of came unexpected too, so you weren't guarding against it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you know you're going in having a bad year, you kind of. But this was very. I mean, you weren't sure how they were going to be.
This was totally unexpected.
But you didn't think that they would be this bad.
But Eli Manning is the adopted brother.
No
We
question.
now know.
All right, so are we going to talk about?
Well,
are you just trying to get me to relax? Is that what it is?
It's a mind game.
Is this a psychological
ploy?
Ploy?
It's a psychological ploy,
Okay.
right? But
Sure.
does it work? I don't know. Would you like to hear? Would you like something to drink?
I have something.
Yeah, that's
Thank you
okay.
very much, though.
All right.
Thank you, Bert.
Is there anything else we can get you? Make you comfortable?
I'm real
Is
good.
it hot, cold, anything?
It's perfect.
All right. So I always found the stories that you told,
Yes.
and actually, what brought up was it last Thanksgiving that you were telling? Who were you telling the stories about? All of a sudden, it came up. Different people. You know what I'm talking about? You started telling the story about.
Right.
I don't know how it came up or who you
I
were
think it
talking
was
to.
with Phil.
Was it?
I think it was Tim's dad.
I mean, it could have been. Somebody was asking about it, and you're telling a story about how your grandfather and my great-grandfather
Mm-hmm.
right, came over to this country, and I thought it'd be interesting. So,
Right.
so just for me,
Right.
even though I've heard it, I really couldn't say it again because it was such an interesting story. So, what do you know about how your family came over to this country? You can start from wherever.
Well, I'm most familiar with my father's family, but I do know something about my mother's family. So
You can start with the father.
it's interesting that my father's family, Nathan's family, and my mother's family, Miriam, both came from the same area of what was either Poland or Russia, because it was changing. It changed over the course of years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it was under Russian domain, and sometimes it was Poland.
Do you know what it is now?
It is Poland
now
today, right?
Okay.
I believe it's in the south east section of Poland, in an area where the biggest city has a famous name of Bialystok, which is named after the bread.
The bialy,
bread.
like a roll.
Right, that's where it is. But
Mhm.
Bialystok was the name of this large city. My mother's family, I don't remember the exact name of the town, lived in one part of that area. My father's family lived in another part of the area. My father's family,
So from the same town or just the same
not
area?
the same
general
town,
area?
just saying they didn't know each other.
Mhm.
In those days, they did not know each other. Those two families. My father's family was a extremely Orthodox Jewish family that raised their children and
Your father's father.
my father's family, my father's ancestors. My father, of course, was born in the United States, so
Right.
his family I'm talking about was his father and mother.
Hey, do you know anything about their parents?
No,
Okay.
I wish I did know more about their parents,
Okay.
but I really don't.
All right.
And in those days, in that area, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, in Russian-dominated Poland, these Orthodox Jews were disenfranchised. They were not allowed to own land. So if you remember the story of Fiddler on the Roof, it
Mhm.
really was similar to that. They became the merchants, they became the milkmen, they sold chickens, and they were tailors, and they provided services.
Because they couldn't have their own
They
farms?
were not allowed to own their own land.
Uh-huh.
So they would go to buy, like in Fiddler on the Roof, he would go buy the milk products from somebody, and then he would take it into town, and then he would sell it to the community in there. And my grandfather, whose name was Henoch, who came from a family that had 3 brothers,
Mhm.
was living in that area, and he married my grandmother Lillian, whose last name was Bard, B-A-R-D. And they both came from ultra-religious Orthodox families. They did not know each other until the day they got married. It was an arranged marriage, which was very common in those days. The two fathers got together and they said, well, I
Well,
have
that was
a
like
daughter.
Fiddler on the Roof also.
Exactly. I have a daughter, you have a son. What can we do? What's the economics
Right,
here?
right, right.
What are you going to give me?
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. And the day they met each other on the day of their marriage. And my grandfather, who was of the 3 brothers, was chosen to study the Talmud and become a rabbi. That was what his plan was.
When you say he was chosen,
Because he would not usually in the family, one child was chosen if they wanted to become a rabbi.
Mhm.
Not everybody, because they all had to work, because they were very, very poor and they
Okay.
all had to work. But
Uh-huh.
if you had the ability and you could, then one of them was chosen to be the Talmudic scholar, and that's what he was studying. That's what he did all day. He would study the Talmud. He was read
And the Talmud
the
is
Talmud is the scrolls written of the ancient Jewish history. You know, if you know the Torah, when you read the Torah on Saturday.
Well, how is that Talmud different from the Old Testament?
It's not the Bible. It's not the Testament. All it is a narrative of prayers that you say every week.
Okay.
And that's what the Talmud is. And each week there's a prayer. There's the standard liturgy that's said every day, and then you read from the Torah or the Talmud every Saturday.
I thought the Torah was the first few books of the Old Testament.
No, the Torah is not. The Torah is not the Old Testament. The Torah is a liturgy of prayers.
Okay. Right.
When you were bar mitzvah, you read what's called the Haftorah, which is that saying from that week's Torah reading. Right? Okay. They brought the Torah out and they unrolled it, and they said, "This is what you're going to read today." And there's 52 of those. Each week there's a different prayer. So he was studying to be a Talmudic scholar or rabbi, and lo and behold, he was conscripted into the Polish army, which was
not the Russian army.
It was the Polish army. I wasn't sure whether it was the Russian army or the Polish army, but my uncle Harry, I asked Harry, one of the last questions I asked him before he got really sick was it the Polish army or the Russian army? He told me it was the Polish army. Okay. So he got married. He had 4 children right away, which was tradition to have large families in those days, and still is tradition in the ultra-Orthodox.
And those 4 children were?
The 4 children were an oldest girl, a name I do not know, and I'll explain what happened to her. And then the oldest brother, Irving, and then the next brother, Herman, and the second girl, Sophie. So Henoch gets conscripted. He goes into the army. He can't stand it. They want him to eat non-kosher food. They want him to work on Saturdays, and he can't do it. And he said, "I can't do this. It's completely against my thought process." And he deserted the Polish army. He came back home, and I guess they gave him some money because he was now a fugitive, even though he's married and he has 4 children. And he said, "I got to get out of here." And so, like a lot of people in the early 1900s from Eastern Europe, a lot of people escaping those kind of circumstances, what they call pogroms. Jewish people weren't allowed to own property. They were really being discriminated against. They were being actually moved from town to town, get out of my town, go live in this town. And things were not good for the Jewish community there. And a lot of Jewish people from Eastern Europe, from Poland and Russia and Romania and Bulgaria and Austria were fleeing to the United States, because this was supposed to be the land of opportunity, and everyone was going to have freedom of religion. You could own your own property. You could do whatever you wanted to do. So he fled the Polish army, went to, I guess they must have gotten enough money together, and he went to England for about 3 or 4 months. And this
is by himself, without any?
By himself. He left his family behind. Went to England for a few months where there was family. Somehow there was family in England. And then I guess he worked for about 3 or 4 months in England, got enough money, got on a steamship to the United States, and he settled in the Lower East Side where almost all the Jewish refugees were settling in New York City. And he got various jobs. He was a tailor, and I think mainly a tailor at that particular time. He worked in I guess what you would call a sweatshop, where they would all sit for like 18 hours a day and sew clothing down in somebody's basement. But he did this for, I guess, a year or so, and he then saved up enough money to send somehow to Europe to get his wife to come to the United States. He also had 3 brothers, Morris and Moshe, who to this day I believe is the grandfather of Adam Richman.
Right, which is, we know he is if you look at the picture.
The great-grandfather. He would be the same relationship that you had. The great-grandfather of Adam, because he looks just like him.
He looks he looks just like our side of the family too.
His other brother's name was Archer, and then Moshe moved to Brooklyn. Archer came over. I don't know what the circumstances were with Moshe and Archer, but they came to the United States too, and I think it was after Henoch did.
Mm-hmm.
He settled in the Bronx, and the third brother, whose name I do not know, went to Israel. So they all fled.
Mm-hmm.
They all fled the Eastern European scene because it was not good.
Well, the name Richman, was that their name?
I think
overseas?
it was. It could have been Reichman or Richman, but it was.
Okay.
But
Was
it
all
was
their
their
names.
name.
Okay.
It was their name. So he came to the United States, saved up the money he was working diligently for, and sent for his wife and 4 children, who came over on a steamship in what they used to be known as the steerage section, which was the cheapest ticket you can get, which was way down on the bottom of the ship. And they made the trip over to the United States. Unfortunately, the oldest child, a girl, I guess developed some sort of disease and died on the steamship, and died before they came to the United States.
Which I think was not uncommon for people.
It was not uncommon because it was. I guess it was pretty unsanitary conditions, and I guess it just.
Do you think the fact that you don't know her name because her name wasn't mentioned over and over? Do you think that was
never mentioned?
Do you think it was because it was such a painful thing for them, or do you think it was just forgotten? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I wish I could have. I wish I could have.
Like none of the brothers and sisters would talk about this girl by name.
Never talked about it. Never talked about it. Just as they never talked about another child that died in the United States. Between my father Nathan and his brother Sam, there was a child named Philip who died. Lived for I think a week.
Okay.
And they never talked about him either. And one day, someone in the cemetery said, "You know, the Philip's grave is down."
And you had no.
I had no idea.
You didn't know he existed.
I never knew he existed.
Wow.
Never knew he existed.
And he's
So-
at Mount Moriah Cemetery.
Yeah, right.
All right, so they make the journey.
Make the journey with 4 children. They
Those
arrived
3.
with 3 children.
Yep.
And so they all lived somehow in the Lower East Side, and they had absolutely no money.
You don't know anything about their living conditions back then, or how
It
they
was
lived.
probably in what they called the those tenement apartments. They probably had 1 room for all of them, and I don't even know how old they all were.
Did your grandmother work?
Probably, yeah. I'm sure she worked. She worked actually in West New York. She worked with them.
So
they were when they became butchers.
Okay.
She worked with them.
So they're in. So the 3 Henoch,
Lillian,
and the 3 children.
Lillian Bard, Henoch, Richman, the 3 children are now in the Lower East Side. And Henoch hears that there is a factory in a place called West New York, New Jersey, across the river, that they were making lace. It was a lace factory, and that the owner of this factory was hiring Jews, and that he was letting them not work on Saturday, because I guess it was tough to find jobs that you didn't have to work on Saturday. So Henoch picked up his children, his wife and his 3 children, and he moved to West New York, where he worked in this lace factory.
Do you know where they lived or how they lived?
They lived, I know they lived on Washington Street in West New York, which was on the other side of Bergen Line Avenue.
In an apartment, or?
They rented an apartment in someone's house.
Okay.
And Henoch became, in essence, the first. And there was a growing Jewish community living there, because a lot of these other people came because they could work on these factories and not work on Saturday. And I guess Henoch, so there was a growing Jewish community in West New York. They came over, Lillian came over, Henoch came over, I believe, in 1906. And Lillian came over in 1907. And my father was the firstborn, Nathan was the firstborn child in America in 1908. So, and they were now living in West New York. And there was a growing Jewish community there, so Henoch did 2 things. He decided that the Jewish community needed some services, and he decided to go in to become a butcher, where he provided kosher meat to this Jewish community, and that was his profession for lots and lots of years. He became a butcher, and
with a kosher butcher.
Kosher butcher that serviced the Jewish community in West New York. So
I wonder how that thought process, like I guess he had some of those skills. Like he was a tailor,
He was a
and he became
tailor,
butcher. Those are
right.
just skills he had in the old country that he
Probably,
had
yeah,
to survive.
He probably watched and learned and
Mhm.
listened because that's
We're
what
not
they
sure if he owned the butcher shop, though.
did.
Mhm.
He did own
He did own the butcher
He owned
shop.
the butcher shop?
Yeah, he owned the butcher shop. Matter of fact, remember the picture I have is with
Mhm.
Hanoch and Lillian in their
With the
butcher
aprons.
in their apron.
So
in
did
their
that
butcher
happen
shop.
pretty soon after he came to West New York? You
Yeah,
know?
I think pretty soon after he came to West New York, he went into the butcher business,
Mhm.
and he did another thing. The house on Washington Street became, in essence, the first synagogue in West New York, because he used to get all the people used to come for services. In the Jewish religion, you're supposed to say 3 prayers a day, in the morning, in the afternoon, in the night, and then of course on Saturday, and you're supposed to spend the time in the synagogue. So what they did is they were whenever he provided the availability of his house
Mhm.
for the people to come and pray.
Mhm.
So in essence, it became the first synagogue. And then they started becoming a little more prosperous, and the whole community was becoming a little more prosperous, and people were buying property, and they were just as it was as advertised and
Mhm.
promised, they were allowed to buy property if they wanted to, and people started earning money, and they all started putting their money together, and they built. They took out a mortgage, and they built Sharazadic Synagogue, which my grandfather was one of the founding fathers of the synagogue that I was bar mitzvahed in, and that you were bar mitzvahed.
And you were married into, right?
We were married there too.
Thank you.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's
And
my mother and father
were
were
married
married there. Yes. Yes.
okay. How do you spell Sharazadic?
Share,
Mhm.
capital Zedak.
Do you know what that translates to?
No.
I don't know. All these years, right?
I don't know. You
Yeah.
can look it up on your computer.
I know we could. I was just wondering.
No.
So Nathan was born.
Nathan was born in 1908. And
1908.
then, in rapid succession, after 1908 came my Uncle Sam.
Mhm.
So already we
So-
had Uncle Irving, Uncle Herman, and Sophie,
Right.
European born.
Yep.
Nathan,
Nathan.
first born in the United States. My Uncle Sam.
Mhm.
Then there was his Philip, who died a
Mhm.
week after he was born.
Mhm.
Then there was Abraham, Uncle Abe.
Mhm.
Aunt Evelyn, Aunt Rose, and Uncle Harry.
Right.
That's 10 people, 9 of which survived. They lived to old age.
You tell me you're on TV right now?
Tim work. Hi Tim, how are you? Good. Hey, Glenn was visiting today, and he bought a new computer.
Sort of.
Glenn.
And I was wondering if we were debating whether he needs to buy Office,
It's such a
or it can be
wonderful
loaded
story.
somehow. If you have Office that he could load. Or is that illegal? Or shouldn't be talking like this over the
The
phone?
NSA is listening.
The NSA is listening.
Uh-huh.
It said.
Forget it. I'm not going to have him
And they're listening to all conversations.
Mhm.
So right.
Glenn, he
I'm
knows
for
so
Bush.
much about his family.
I'm for Cruz. I'm voting for Cruz. Are you still typing this? So yeah. So does he have to go out and buy Office, or can he get it some other way? Okay, thanks. Bye.